Elena Reyes tugged her cardigan tighter around her slim shoulders, bracing against the cold wind sweeping through the city's downtown alley. The streets were buzzing with sleek cars and glimmering heels, and the high-rise towers shimmered in glass and gold, mocking her every step as she weaved through the crowd like a shadow. She adjusted the strap of her worn-out satchel and glanced down at the envelope in her hand again. An invitation, white, thick, and formal. She hadn't believed it when she'd first found it in her mailbox 2 days ago. No name on the sender, just embossed initials, D.B. You are cordially invited to the Blackwell Foundation's annual gala, a celebration of progress and philanthropy. Formal attire required. Invitation admits one. A mistake, maybe, a cruel joke, or a fluke. Whatever it was, she needed a miracle, and even if it meant stepping into a lion's den wearing a sheep's skin, she would take her chances. She stared at herself in the cracked window of a parked car. Her reflection didn't lie, she looked like someone who didn't belong. Her mother's old pale blue dress, faded with time and barely stitched at the seams, hung unevenly on her frame. She tried to fix the torn hem, but the hand stitches looked amateurish. Her heels were second-hand and biting her toes. She had considered not going at all. But something in her gut told her this night would matter. As she neared the gates of the grand ballroom, a towering Art Deco structure with gold-tipped pillars and men in tuxedos at the entrance, her steps slowed. This was a mistake. The red carpet glittered beneath the flood of camera flashes. Reporters hovered like bees. People stepped out of Rolls-Royces and limousines, dripping in silk and diamonds, flashing smiles that had never known hunger or fear. And here she was, a ghost from the gutters. The security guard at the entrance raised a brow as she approached. "Ma'am, this is a private." "I have an invitation," she said quickly, offering the envelope with both hands. He took it, squinting. "You sure this is real?" She bit her lip. I received it in the mail. It's addressed to me." He looked her up and down, clearly unimpressed. "We've had people try to sneak in before." "It's real," a deep, calm voice cut through the noise. The guard turned, so did she. Standing just a few feet away was a man in a sharp black suit, tall and composed, with eyes like storms and a presence that silenced the world around him. Damien Blackwell. Elena froze. Everyone knew his face. Billionaire CEO, philanthropist, reluctant media darling, every magazine adored him, every scandal barely touched him. And now he was walking toward her. "She's with me," he said, taking the invitation from the guard without looking at it. "She gets in." The guard, stunned, stepped aside. Elena stared at Damien, confused. "I'm sorry," she said nervously. "I don't understand." He smiled faintly. "You will." And before she could protest, he slipped off his black tailored coat and gently draped it over her shoulders. The weight of it stunned her, warm, luxurious, heavy with meaning. Camera flashes went wild. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Who was she? Why was Damien Blackwell protecting a woman in a ripped dress? He leaned close and whispered, "Let them stare." And with that, he gently guided her forward, one hand lightly on the small of her back, past the red carpet, past the whispers, into the heart of the most elite event of the year. Elena's heart pounded. This wasn't happening. But somehow it was. The ballroom was a vision of decadence. Crystal chandeliers glistened above their heads like falling stars, casting warm light over golden railings, velvet drapes, and polished marble floors. A grand piano hummed softly in the corner. Waiters floated by with silver trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Every guest sparkled in designer gowns and tuxedos. And yet every eye was on her. Elena clutched Damien's coat tighter around her, shrinking as dozens of well-dressed people turned their heads in unison. Whispers followed her like shadows. "Who is she?" "Did you see that coat? He never gives anyone his coat." "Her dress is torn. She looks homeless." Damien didn't flinch. He walked with effortless grace, completely unbothered, as if he were proud to have her by his side. His hand never left her back. Elena felt like she was walking through a dream, or a trap. "You sure I should be here?" she whispered as they passed a floral centerpiece taller than her. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm. "You're exactly where you should be." She frowned. "You don't even know me." He smiled but didn't respond. Instead, he guided her toward a private balcony that overlooked the city skyline. The noise of the ballroom dulled behind the closed glass doors, replaced by the hum of night air and distant traffic. "Why did you do that?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Out there with your coat, you don't even know my name." "I know enough," he said. She stared at him, waiting. "I know you hesitated before stepping onto the carpet," he continued. "I know you stitched your dress by hand. I know you looked at the chandeliers like they were something you've only seen in movies. And I know courage when I see it." Her breath caught. "You were watching me?" she asked, her voice small. "Not exactly, but I recognized the look in your eyes. I've worn it myself." Elena couldn't look away from him. He leaned against the balcony railing, the city lights reflecting in his gray eyes. "You're not the only person who's ever felt like they didn't belong in a room." She looked down at her hands. "I used to dream of rooms like this, of galas and gowns and being someone important, but now I just want to survive the week, feed my daughter, keep the electricity on." His gaze sharpened. "You have a daughter?" She nodded slowly. "She's 6, her name S. Rosie, smartest girl I've ever met." A faint smile touched his lips. "She gets it from her mother." The compliment stung, not because it wasn't kind, but because it was too kind. Elena felt her throat tighten. "You still haven't told me why I'm here," she said. "Why did I get an invitation?" Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out at the skyline as if searching for something in the distance. Finally, he said, "Do you remember Little Haven Shelter?" Elena blinked. "Of course, I lived there when I was pregnant with Rosie." "You volunteered at the local library across the street, didn't you?" She hesitated. "Only for a few weeks. It was part of my program hours." "You helped a little boy named Tommy who couldn't read," Damien said softly. "You stayed late with him, missed your own meals to make sure he learned." Elena stared. "How do you know that?" "I fund that shelter," Damien said. "And the library. I read every report. I saw your name in one of the volunteer logs and started looking deeper." "You tracked me down?" she asked, half stunned, half suspicious. He met her eyes. "I remember what it felt like to be invisible, to do something good and have no one notice. But I noticed. And tonight, I wanted the world to notice you too." Her lips parted in disbelief. "This night was never about the money or the glitter," he added. "It was about people who still believe in kindness. You deserve to be seen, Elena." The sound of her name on his lips sent a shiver through her. No one had said her name like that in a long time, not with warmth, not with intention. Elena stepped back, needing air. "I'm no one special, Mr. Blackwell. I'm just trying to keep my life from falling apart." He stepped closer, slow and steady. "Even if that's true, there's still beauty in that fight, and I think you're stronger than you know." A long silence hung between them. Then the door behind them creaked open. "Elena Reyes," a woman in a sleek black dress stepped out, holding a tablet. "Mr. Blackwell asked that I bring you a surprise." Elena frowned. "What surprise?" The woman turned the tablet toward her. It was a video call. On the screen, Rosie. "Mommy," the little girl's voice rang out. "Mommy, look, I'm in a princess bed." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Her daughter was in a soft pink room with a canopy bed and toys she'd never seen before. "Where are you?" Elena asked, tears in her voice. "A lady came and got me. She said Mr. Damien, he sent her." Rosie beamed. "There's cartoons and pizza and a bubble bath." Elena turned to Damien, stunned. "I didn't want you to worry," he said softly. "She's safe. She's at my sister's guest house. My niece is keeping her company." Elena's eyes welled up. "Why are you doing all this?" His voice was barely above a whisper now. "Because I've made billions in deals. But tonight, giving a coat to a girl who walked in with courage. That may be the best investment I've ever made. Elena couldn't sleep, even hours after returning home, with a chauffeured ride, no less. Her fingers still gripped the collar of Damien's coat like it was a lifeline. She sat by the window of her small apartment, city lights flickering in the distance, as Rosie snored softly in the next room, still wrapped in the sparkly pink pajamas Damien's people had bought for her. Elena could still hear her daughter's voice when she saw the bed. "Is this all for me, Mommy?" She hadn't seen Rosie smile like that in months. Her daughter deserved that smile every day, and that thought alone filled Elena's chest with guilt and resolve. She couldn't let this moment break her, or let Damien's kindness make her forget the realities of her life. But the question kept echoing, why her? Why had a billionaire, cold, untouchable, and the subject of hundreds of tabloid stories, chosen her? The knock at her door broke the silence. She startled, instinctively clutching Damien's coat tighter. No one visited at night. Another knock, firmer now. Elena cautiously opened the door, her heart in her throat. It was him. Damien stood there in a black turtleneck and gray coat, no cameras, no drivers, just a single white flower in his hand. "I figured it wasn't fair that you only got to see me in a tux," he said, offering a small smile. She didn't know whether to laugh or panic. "What are you doing here?" "I had to make sure the coat made it home safely," he joked. She raised an eyebrow. "And to talk," he added, more serious now. After a pause, she stepped aside. "Come in." The contrast was sharp. He looked like he belonged in a penthouse, not this aging apartment with chipped paint and a half-broken heater. But he didn't seem uncomfortable. In fact, he looked around like he was taking it all in. "It's small," Elena muttered, suddenly self-conscious. "I haven't had time to decorate or afford to." "It's real," he said simply. "I like real." She placed the coat over the chair, pouring him tea she'd brewed earlier to stay awake. "I hope you're not here to play charity," she said, her voice low. Damien didn't flinch. "I'm here because I owe you an apology." That caught her off guard. "I didn't mean to put you on the spot tonight," he said. "I just got carried away. When I saw you hesitating at the door, I remembered what that felt like. You reminded me of someone I used to know." She tilted her head. "Someone you used to know?" He nodded slowly. "Me." Elena looked down at the cup in her hand. "You weren't always a billionaire." He smiled wryly. "Grew up in foster care, a dozen homes before I turned 16, wore the same shoes for 3 years, got laughed at when I showed up to prom in a thrift store tux." Something shifted in her. Suddenly, the polished exterior didn't feel so untouchable. She leaned forward. "So how'd you get here?" Damien hesitated. "I got lucky. A teacher believed in me, helped me get into a program. I started coding at night, built a payment app that got bought out. Then I built another, and another. And now you throw galas with $10,000 centerpieces," she said softly. He chuckled, "Something like that." They sat in silence for a moment. "You don't do this often, do you?" she asked. "Show up to strangers' apartments with flowers." "I don't," he said. Her eyes searched his face. "Then why me?" He sighed, setting the flower gently on the table. "Because you're the first person I've seen in years who reminded me what humility looks like, what grace looks like. You didn't beg, you didn't ask, you just showed up. And you helped people even when your own world was falling apart." A lump rose in her throat. "I'm not a saint," she said. "I've made mistakes." "So have I," he replied. "But I don't think that disqualifies us from being seen." The emotion between them crackled like static. For a second, Elena forgot about the bills on her table, the cold nights, the unreturned job applications. For a second, she let herself imagine something more. But reality slammed back into her chest like a wave. "I don't belong in your world, Damien," she whispered. "This, whatever this is, it's a fairy tale, and real life doesn't work like that." Damien stood, his expression unreadable. "You're right, real life is messy. but maybe that's why we need people like you in it. He walked toward the door, pausing as he reached the handle. When you're ready to stop surviving and start living, I'll be waiting. And just like that, he was gone. Elena stared at the door long after it closed. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she felt something that had once been foreign to her. Hope. The next morning felt different. Elena awoke before the sun, her small apartment unusually silent. Rosie still curled in bed, the pink pajamas now rumpled but beloved. Elena stood by the window, Damien's coat folded neatly over the chair where she'd placed it last night, as if it held the memory of everything that had happened. She should have felt overwhelmed. Instead, she felt alert, almost ready. She found a note tucked into the pocket of the coat. Elena, this isn't a favor. Just a door if you choose to open it. A day. Attached was a business card. Montrose Foundation. Head Office, Community Development Program. On the back, scribbled in fine black ink, 9am, ask for Julia. Elena stared at it for a long time. She didn't want charity, but something about his message didn't sound like pity. It felt like a push. At 8:15, she dropped Rosie off at the neighbor's with an apology and a promise of an extra hour of babysitting. By 8:50, she stood at the front of a building she'd only passed from a distance, the Montrose Foundation headquarters. It didn't look like a place for people like her. The glass sparkled, the floors gleamed, everyone wore suits. Elena tugged at her thrift store blouse and wondered for the 1000th time if she was making a mistake. But she remembered what Damien had said. You helped people even when your own world was falling apart. That had to count for something. She took a breath and stepped inside. Julia turned out to be a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and an evaluating gaze. She ushered Elena into a modest office, sat down, and got right to the point. You ran a local food bank, she said, glancing at a file. Worked in shelters, started a community kitchen out of your apartment. I tried, Elena said carefully. It was never official. That's exactly why we need you, Julia replied. Elena blinked. Excuse me. Julia leaned forward. Damien Montrose is expanding our outreach arm. He wants someone who knows the field, the real field, not just someone with a degree. Someone who knows what it's like to be hungry, scared, ignored. He mentioned you. Elena's mouth went dry. He recommended me. Insisted, Julia said. But this isn't a handout. You'd have to prove yourself. I'm used to that. Good, Julia smiled faintly. We're starting a pilot program in the city's West District. You manage logistics, coordinate volunteers, design meal delivery systems. Elena swallowed. When would I start? Julia glanced at her watch. Now. By that afternoon, Elena was wearing a foundation-issued lanyard, walking through a warehouse where volunteers packed warm meals and sorted donations. She took notes, made suggestions, even rolled up her sleeves to scrub one of the soup kettles when no one else would. It felt natural. It felt like purpose. By evening, she was exhausted, but it was the kind of exhaustion that made her heart full. She hadn't felt this in years. As she walked to the front of the building, her eyes caught a familiar silhouette waiting by the glass doors. Damien, leaning casually against the wall, no bodyguard in sight. Elena slowed her steps. Are you following me now? He grinned. Julia said you crushed it. I thought you deserved dinner. Are you always this persistent? Only when I mean it. She studied him, unsure whether to laugh or run. I haven't decided if I'm mad at you for pushing me into this. Damien took a step closer, and... I'm not mad, she admitted. He reached into his pocket, pulling out 2 wrapped sandwiches and a pair of soda cans. This is the most unglamorous billionaire dinner date you'll ever have. She raised an eyebrow. Date. Let's just call it coordinated nourishment between 2 people with chemistry. Elena rolled her eyes, but she didn't say no. They sat on the back steps of the foundation building, city lights beginning to glow. They ate quietly, watching a couple teenagers chase a soccer ball in the nearby park. Elena felt something soften inside her. "I didn't think I'd ever do something that mattered again," she said. "Before today, it was just about surviving." "You're allowed to have more than survival," Damien replied. "You deserve more." She looked at him. "You keep saying things like that. Why?" He turned serious. "Because I've met people who had everything and still felt empty. You had nothing and still gave." Her throat tightened. He reached into his coat again. This time he pulled out something small, worn, faded. It was a picture of a teenage boy with a busted lip and a younger woman holding a sandwich out to him. It was grainy, old, but unmistakable. Elena stared. "That's me," she whispered, "from the shelter." Damien nodded. "You gave me a sandwich and sat with me when no one else would. I was 16, angry, alone. You were volunteering." "I don't even remember." "I never forgot." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You helped me once," he said softly. "Let me help you now." Elena stood frozen in front of the convenience store window, Rosie's tiny hand in hers. Across the glass was a glossy magazine cover. A photo of her barefoot in the torn dress, Damien's coat around her shoulders. "Billionaire Damien Montrose embraces mystery woman at Gala. Who is she?" The headline burned into her eyes. Rosie pointed. "Mama, that's you." Elena blinked hard. "I know, baby." Her face was everywhere, on magazine covers, viral tweets, TikToks. Some posts called her a rags-to-riches Cinderella. Others weren't so kind. Homeless woman crashes high-profile event. Montrose loses his mind over charity case. Manipulative single mom targets billionaire. The internet, it seemed, didn't need truth to form a narrative. Elena's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message, another cruel meme, another fake story. Julia had warned her the attention might come, but nothing could have prepared Elena for the wave of shame that washed over her, not for what had happened at the gala, but for being seen, being judged. By strangers who didn't know her. She tucked Rosie into bed that night with extra kisses. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We're okay." But she wasn't sure she believed it. 2 days later, she walked into the Montrose Foundation's headquarters with her shoulders squared and her eyes calm, though her heart felt like it was breaking open. She had made up her mind. She found Julia in the break room, sipping black coffee and flipping through a stack of volunteer reports. "I need to resign," Elena said quietly. Julia looked up slowly. "No." Elena blinked. "I didn't expect." "Not accepting it." Julia folded her hands. "You're not quitting because of a few vultures with internet access." "It's not just that," Elena swallowed. "I don't want to be Damien's charity case." "You are." "That's not how the world sees it." Julia gave her a long, measured look. "What if I told you Damien's been in 3 board meetings defending your position, pushing for your permanent role in West District leadership? What if I told you every single volunteer here looks up to you?" "I didn't ask for all this." "I know," Julia leaned forward, "but the people who change the world usually never do." Elena stood silent, unsure what to say. She wanted to fight back, but she was tired of being strong alone. Then a voice cut through the hallway. "She's not going anywhere." "Damien's." He strode into the room with fire in his eyes and something clenched in his hand. Newspaper clippings, social media screenshots. "She's not going to be shamed into silence while people like me get praised for putting a coat on someone." Elena shook her head. "You shouldn't be here." "Why not?" he challenged. "I've stayed quiet while they tore you apart. I'm done with that." She stepped toward him, furious now. "You don't get to make this about you." "I'm not. I'm making it about us." "Us?" she laughed bitterly. "Damien, we aren't a fairy tale. We're a scandal." "I don't care." "Well, I do." His face shifted. "Why are you pushing me away?" "Because you're not the one who has to explain to her daughter. Why the world thinks her mother's a liar. He went quiet, the room pulsed with silence. Julia quietly stepped out, giving them space. Alina sat down, shaking. "I've worked so hard to be invisible," she whispered. "I blended into shelters, disappeared at food banks. I built a life with duct tape and prayer, and one night in that dress made it all collapse." Damien moved slowly toward her. "You didn't collapse, they tried to crush you, and you're still here." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want to be brave all the time." "You don't have to," he knelt beside her. "Let me carry it even just a little." She looked down at him. "I know it wasn't the plan," he said softly. "You never asked for this, but you gave me something once, hope. Now I want to give you a life where you don't have to fight every single day just to matter." She hesitated. "What if I fall again?" she asked. Damien's voice was steady. "Then I'll be there when you do." The next day, Alina stood at the podium of a press conference arranged by the Montrose Foundation. Reporters crowded the front rows. Damien stood off to the side, silent and still. No cameras on him. Alina stepped forward, heart pounding. "My name is Alina Hayes. I'm a single mother, a community worker, and now, thanks to this foundation, a program director." A few flashes went off. "You may have seen a version of me in headlines. That version isn't the truth." Her voice grew stronger. "The truth is, I was homeless. I was hungry. I lived in shelters. I made mistakes. I wore a ripped dress to a gala because it was the only thing I had. And the man who gave me his coat didn't do it because I'm a project. He did it because he's someone who knew me before he was powerful, before either of us had anything." She paused. "I don't want sympathy. I don't need saving. I need space. Space to work, to raise my daughter, to help people like I once was." Cameras clicked. "And if that threatens someone's perception of what a woman in ripped clothes can be, good. Let it." Later that night, Alina found Damien sitting quietly on the back steps of the foundation building, just like the first night they shared sandwiches. She sat beside him. He offered her a soda can without speaking. For a moment, they just listened to the city. "You didn't have to come to the press conference," she said. "I didn't want the spotlight." She smiled faintly. "You already had it, Billionaire." "Not where it matters." Alina turned to him. "So what now?" He looked at her, eyes serious. "Now we rebuild. You keep running the program. I keep being annoying. And maybe we take Rosie to the zoo this weekend." She laughed. "You want to meet my daughter again?" He nodded. "She deserves to know her mom is the strongest woman I've ever met." A long silence. And then Alina rested her head lightly against his shoulder. "I think I'm finally ready," she whispered. "Ready for what?" "To stop hiding." Damien smiled softly. "Welcome back to the world, Alina." 2 years later. New York City, spring. The gala was once again in full bloom, fairy lights strung across the Montrose Foundation's glass atrium, a string quartet playing softly in the background. Servers passed hors d'oeuvres. Photographers roamed gently, this time briefed not to hound the guests. But this time, everyone noticed Alina Hayes. She stood poised and radiant in a sleek, deep emerald gown tailored to her figure. Her curls framed her face, her smile easy, her posture strong. No rips, no desperation. Just presence. The headlines tonight wouldn't be scandalous. They'd say things like, "From homeless to heroine, Alina Hayes co-chairs Montrose Charity Gala." "Billionaire's partner brings street outreach into national spotlight." Damien Montrose and Alina Hayes launch $100M initiative for mothers in crisis. She walked through the room like she belonged. Because she did. At the far end of the room, Rosie, now 5, was twirling in a tiny matching dress near the chocolate fountain. Damien, in his classic black tux, watched her with a smile so unguarded, it softened even the coldest faces in the crowd. "She's got your stubborn streak," he murmured as Alina walked up beside him. "She's got your eyes," Alina replied. She's got her own story now. They stood in silence for a moment, watching Rosie giggle with the children of other donors and staff. Can you believe, Damien said, this all started with a glass of warm lemonade and a coat. Alina laughed. It wasn't even good lemonade. I didn't have sugar that day. You had grit and heart, that's what I tasted. She rolled her eyes, cheesy. He grinned, honest. They clinked champagne glasses. Outside, news vans and journalists waited respectfully, but no one dared twist the narrative now. Alina was untouchable, not because of her fame, but because of the lives she changed. Her Second Start program had helped over 3,000 single mothers escape homelessness, violence, and joblessness. Shelters now partnered with the Montrose Foundation nationwide. And Alina, she was working on a book, tentatively titled Coats and Lemonade. She wasn't just Damien's mystery woman anymore. She was herself recognized, honored, seen. Later that night, after the final toast and final photos, Alina stepped out onto the balcony, the cool wind lifting her curls slightly. Damien followed. Remember when you said you were tired of being strong all the time? He asked softly. I remembers. Still tired. Some days, she looked at him, but it's different now, I have help. He moved closer, always. She leaned into him. You know, for a long time I thought I had to choose between being loved or being independent. And now I know love should make you stronger, not smaller. He looked down at her, eyes filled with that same spark from the night he first wrapped his coat around her shoulders. Alina, he said, voice deep with emotion, you made me see the world differently, not from the top down, but from the sidewalk up. I used to think impact meant money. Now I know it means showing up, every day. She smiled. You did show up. And I'll keep showing up. For you, for Rosie, for the women who sell lemonade and hope someone notices. A pause. Then Damien reached into his pocket, heart thundering. Alina Hayes, he said, slowly dropping to one knee. I didn't plan for you, but you changed my entire life, not by asking, not by demanding, but by surviving and then thriving. Will you marry me? For a moment, the world went still. Alina blinked, laughed, cried all at once, and whispered, only if you promise to never try my lemonade again. He chuckled, deal. She held out her hand, and he slipped the ring on. From the shadows, Rosie clapped. Are we a family now? Damien turned to her. We always were. Alina lifted her daughter into her arms. You're the reason we found each other. Rosie beamed. Can I tell my class tomorrow? Damien nodded. Tell them everything. Tell them your mama built an empire out of courage, and your dad just tries to keep up. Rosie squealed, yay. As the city sparkled below them, and the night stretched softly across the skyline, Alina looked out into the stars. She remembered every broken step, every cold night, every time she almost gave up. And then she remembered a coat, and a kind face, and a second chance. She took Damien's hand, held Rosie close, and smiled toward a future no longer built on fear, but on faith. Because the girl in ripped clothes didn't just survive the gala. She rewrote the story.